Please be seated. Good evening. It is good to be with all of you this evening. So in a few moments, I will bid you to the observance of a Holy Lent. And what this means is that for the next 40 days, roughly 10% of the year, we are called to set out a different pattern for ourselves by fasting and by self-reflection. We need to eat to live, but that is not sufficient for life. Our dependence on food and drink for survival becomes sin when it ceases to point us towards our dependence upon God. All of our desires, passions, and longings, hunger, thirst for friendships and romance, eating, breathing, drinking, all these things properly ordered point us to God and are gateways into something more real and more life-giving than what we experience. Something where moth and rust do not consume and thieves do not break in and steal. Fasting helps orient our desires to their ultimate source, and it reminds us that we are dependent on more than physical satisfaction in order to live. Indeed, fasting in Lent is not something to be practiced in order to be seen by others. It is for us and for us alone. When we do it as a public spectacle, then we miss out on its benefits. So, fast throughout Lent. Just don't make a big deal of it. Self-reflection, though, is an entirely different matter altogether. All of us have things that we can improve upon. We train and discipline ourselves to form habits and abilities that make us better at sports, and our jobs, at housekeeping, at being organized. As like any professional athlete, the moment we stop training, we begin to lose our edge. We always have room for improvement. We all have areas where we can grow. And self-reflection is the key to gaining the vision of what in your life needs some work. Maybe it is a relationship with an old friend or family member, control over your temper, being prone to idleness and watching too much TV, your prayer life, study habits, and so forth. What might some self-reflection reveal to you this Lenten season? There is a danger. And the danger in self-reflection and training and discipline for the purposes of self-improvement may lead one to believe that a better life and a better and an improved life is a matter of one's own making. And repeated unsuccessful attempts may lead you to believe that constant failure is just who you are. Don't you think it's somewhat odd and maybe ironic that the gospel reading appointed for Ash Wednesday is one in which Jesus basically says, "Do not put ashes on your forehead"? Did that strike anybody else here when you heard that? He doesn't exactly say that, but in effect, this is what he's saying. Beware of practicing your piety before others in order to be seen by them. For then you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So then we gather around in this place, we put ashes on our foreheads, and we go out in the world with those ashes on display, practicing our piety before others. Now, it's possible, maybe even likely, that we are doing so fully without any motivation to be seen by others. But here's the thing. We totally should be doing that. There is something beneficial in practicing this particular pious act so that it may be seen by others. And it is no accident that we read this gospel today. Jesus basically says, as I said, don't put ashes on your forehead and then go to dinner or to work with your face all disfigured. Yet this is exactly what we do, deliberately. Here's the truth. We as a race have proven day in and day out through the course of history that we cannot make it on our own. We are prone to disobedience. All of our accomplishments turn to dust. All of our joy is mingled with sorrow. To mark our heads today and to head out into the world is an act of deliberate disobedience that embodies this one very truth. We are not only dependent upon God for life above and beyond eating and drinking and breathing. We are dependent upon God for our salvation above and beyond anything that we can do for ourselves. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, love your neighbor. Yes, we need to do good and to live rightly. But just as with eating and drinking, good works become sin when we believe that they bring us salvation and merit God's favor. So, tonight, we disobey. We mark our heads to be seen by others, and we sin. We thus enter into Lent, remembering that it is not by our faithfulness, but by God's grace and Jesus' death on the cross, that the sinful reality we find ourselves trapped in was itself put to death. And this is the point, isn't it? Jesus died that we may live and rose to new life, that sharing in a death like his, we can also share in a resurrection like his. And you and I had absolutely nothing to do with that except to be the objects of God's love, whether we deserved it or not. So maybe this season, our self-reflection can focus on how, without God, we are powerless to overcome the reign of sin in our lives. How Jesus has already overcome the reign of sin for us if we would but yield to his will and love ourselves as we are loved by him. If the idea of fasting is to deny ourselves the things that satisfy hunger as a way to reorient our hunger to its deeper meaning and desire, then our deliberate disobedience today reorients us not to judgment, but instead to God's grace and abundant generosity and to everlasting life. So I invite you this Lenten season to make a fast of some sort. Make a fast of some sort and keep it. I invite you also to carve out time for self-reflection. And tonight, I invite you to sin boldly. By the marks on your heads, speak the truth about your inability to make it on your own, and then embrace and ever hold fast the promise of everlasting life. For by God's abundant love, even at our graves we sing our song, Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia.